Hello and welcome to the Recovery Matters podcast from CCAR, the podcast where putting recovery first is always the goal. Here we present interviews, discussions, stories, and speeches to cultivate the understanding and acceptance of the power, hope, and healing of recovery from alcohol and other addictions. Here are your hosts, Phil and Sandy Valentine.
Philip, I just got off one of my commitments for my education.
You mean you actually talked your way out of that commitment?
I almost talked my way out of it.
Almost talked your way out of it. You didn't.
I didn't. I was not successful. But it's interesting when we have this opportunity to do this podcast every week, and whether we're working with, interviewing one person or two person, I feel like what I've gotten out of that hour or 2 hours that we spend is so incredibly valuable, but it does make me less amenable to things that are just done to check off a box. When we have the privilege of hearing incredible stories from incredible people that I change and learn and grow from, to then go to something just to check off a box, it makes me very much less tolerant.
Well, you're talking about your social work class, trying to get your master's or striving to get your master's in social work.
Yes.
You've often said it's more like social justice and not necessarily social work.
There's a lot of social activism that
Social activism, all right, I'll get the right word.
Yeah.
And I can see by the look on your face you don't really want me to go down that avenue, so I won't.
Yeah. I was just sharing how meaningful it is.
Well, I think a lot of times people get wrapped up in theory and are in their head instead of like the actual lived experience, the actual experience of dealing with people and talking with people and understanding where they come from and what they're about.
And I think that's what sets aside the recovery movement. And it sets aside the work that CCAR does here.
We have a pretty cool dude here in recovery.
Yeah, I'd love to meet him.
So I'm going to ask him, Jason, will you say hello?
Good morning.
There
Hello.
Good. See that, Don? He's a rebel already. Because usually I tell someone to say hello, everyone. They say hello, everyone. And I said, say hello. And he said, good morning.
I always try to start with good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's something I've done from a kid.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, you're still a kid, aren't you? No.
What's that number?
Under 40 for me.
Yeah. I don't feel it, though.
Like my oldest kid, daughter she just turned what? 34? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So anything under 40 is definitely still a kind of
I'm 31, but I always say I have an extra 10 years wear and tear in my body.
I understand.
Well, there's the lead into quite the story, isn't there? So what do you do here at CCAR?
So I'm an emergency department recovery coach. I've been with CCAR since July of 2019, so I got a little over 2.5 years.
No, you don't. You've been here over 2 years already? That's amazing.
Yeah. It doesn't seem it.
No.
Every day that I wake up, I'm blessed to have the job that I have. It doesn't even feel like a job. I'm excited to go to work. Before you know it, the day's over and my head's back on the pillow.
There you go. So if you had a professional bio, what would you include in your professional bio?
He likes this question.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for that.
I know. That's why I like those questions. So it would say definitely CCAR Emergency Department Recovery Coach.
Full-time person in recovery.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. I'm a full-time person in recovery.
I think, yeah. That's cool.
That's excellent.
I am a twin.
Oh, that's cool.
I only see one of you. Sorry.
Well, your double vision, it's amazing that you're only seeing one of them today.
Oh, sorry, Don. I had to try something.
Yeah, I was never able to pull off that that switch in school since I have a sister.
Oh yeah.
I don't think we could have gotten away with that.
Yeah.
So hence I don't have to ask, are you identical twins?
Right.
You know what? I get that question all the time when
Yeah.
she's right next to me too.
Uh-huh.
It never fails. Oh, are you identical? I don't think so.
What are some of your hobbies?
Cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Cooking is actually probably my number one.
What's your specialty? What did you make recently that you really liked?
Pierogies.
I've seen you.
Wow.
I've heard about your pierogies.
It only took me 27 years to get the recipe from my grandmother.
It did it.
And then, I finally got it. I made it a couple years ago with my mom for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it came out okay. Wasn't anywhere close to what my grandmother makes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've made it a few times since then. And it's gotten a lot closer.
Mm-hmm.
Still not as good as if somebody else made it for you, but it's close.
Maybe she didn't give you all the ingredients.
Oh, it's a tough recipe, isn't it? It can be.
Not really.
Well, the
Yeah.
dough.
I'm not a fan of dough.
Oh,
I get mad every time I make the dough.
Okay.
But in the end, it's worth it.
Uh-huh.
So I usually make 250, 300 of them. Takes me all day. I give away half of them, freeze the rest, and
What do you put in a pierogi?
you can put in pretty much anything you want.
Then what did you put in?
I do one with cheese.
Uh-huh.
I do one with potato and a little cheese, and then sauerkraut.
Wow. Look at Don's like.
I'm getting hungry myself. I just had peanuts.
Yeah.
I actually just finished my last batch that I made, so I got to find some time to make some more.
Mm-hmm.
There's always pierogies in the freezer. If they're not there, I know I need to make some more.
Do you live on pierogies?
Pretty much.
Do you live on
But there's
pierogies?
nothing wrong with that.
I didn't say there was. It sounds
And
very healthy.
I know when I was a kid and I came home from school and I
Mhm.
saw my grandmother's car in the driveway, I knew that I had pierogies, and she would always make a soup. It was like a sour grass and potato soup, and it
Mhm.
paired with the pierogies amazingly.
Yeah.
So I'd run into the house. The pierogies weren't frozen yet, so they were still a little warm.
Mm-hmm.
Make myself a plate, and
See, I've
Didn't get any better
had
than
to
that.
accept in myself that when my grandchildren tell stories about me, what I cooked and my special recipes will have nothing to do with the stories because they are non-existent. I'm just not going to
Sandy,
do that,
are you-
Grandma.
You've always said this about yourself. However, you have a son in college who just posted a picture of Mama's famous chicken broccoli pasta dish.
That's true.
I
Okay, I have
know.
one-
everybody
one
has at
dish.
least one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's chicken cutlet, I think.
Chicken parm.
Oh, chicken parm. Well, out of chicken cutlet.
My birthday's coming up,
We scheduled this podcast a little too close to lunch, I think.
I think we did. Or at least we shouldn't have started off with talking about food.
Well, it was your hobbies that you like to cook.
So we did get to hear a little bit about you being young and Grandma in the driveway. Tell us a little bit. So you just have your twin, or are there more siblings?
No, it's just me and my sister.
Mhm.
I'm 2 minutes older than her.
Mm-hmm.
I
Big
think.
brother.
I think she forced me out. She didn't want me in there.
You've said that before.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Southington.
Okay.
Yeah, I spent 26 years there before I ended up moving into a sober house after my my last detox program.
Yeah.
What's your earliest memory, Jason? Going back, what do you remember?
Besides your sister
early?
shoving you into the world.
And the pierogies and soup.
I don't remember if I remember this from pictures or actually from being there, but it was like my second or third birthday. We had it was a Dalmatian theme, and there were big Dalmatian balloons in the backyard, and I, ran out and jumped on top of the balloon and started hugging the balloon.
Aww.
And you remember that? That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I don't know if I remember that from actually being in person or from seeing pictures, but that's like the thing that I go back to for my earliest memory.
I remember. Do you know my earliest memory?
Nope.
It was Karen Palmer, who lived across the street. We had to be 3 or 4 too, that running across the street to come over to our house to play with Shelly and I. And I don't know why. What's your earliest?
It's not a good one.
Well, then that's more interesting.
Riding my tricycle on the sidewalk near my house.
That's a good memory.
And the 2 older boys in the neighborhood came, one threw sand in my eyes and the other one whipped me with a rope across the stomach, and I had that scar for years. Told you.
That is pretty traumatic.
Yep, and I can remember them inviting my parents had their parents come to our kitchen.
Just as you were riding the little girl riding the tricycle down the street.
Little red tricycle on the sidewalk. Yep.
Aw.
Yeah.
Sand in the face.
Yeah. Other things I remember, like you do from pictures, like I have a picture memory.
That's not your nickname. How you got your nickname?
Sandy, you're such a jerk. Can I call him a jerk on the podcast, Don?
She just did.
Don, don't beat me.
I think I'm lucky it was just a jerk.
But I would like to learn more about Jason now that I've shared my trauma. This is where it all started.
That's an early trauma.
I really did have the scar across my stomach.
What are those guys' names? You remember?
Jonathan Strout.
Yes.
And Sean Riccio.
See, you never forget them, right?
No.
Well, how about that?
They're probably still out there. There you go.
Yeah, well, Jonathan and what was the other guy's name? Sean. Don't cross paths with me.
He's not scary at all.
Am I scary?
You're a big teddy bear.
Aww.
Oh, really? I don't intimidate you at all?
Not one bit.
Dang it.
All right. Can we go back to...
His earliest memory was hugging the Dalmatian balloon.
What was life growing up in your house?
Keeping us back on track.
I had a very good childhood. If you were watching a movie and you had that perfect family, minus like the white picket fence. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a white picket fence around my parents' house. I had everything that I ever wanted, everything that I ever needed. I had my sister there with me, to do whatever we were doing. So I always had a friend to, do something with.
Yeah. Your parents were together?
Yep, still are. They're celebrating, or they're on 30. I'm 31. They were born, or they were married 5 years or 6 years before I was born. So upper 30s.
Yeah. Wow, that's great.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have a grandfather clock in their living room, and it's got their wedding date on it.
Maybe you should go look at it.
I haven't opened up the grandfather clock in many years to wind that up.
Right. We used to have a cuckoo clock that you had to pull the thing, right? You had to pull the little weights down, and then it goes back.
They had the 3 strings on it that you had to pull.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. He knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You do too?
Was there a bird that actually came out and made noise?
Yeah, because my dad used to travel, for work, he traveled all over the world, and I think he actually bought that in like the Netherlands or something like that, Finland. It was a really cool clock.
I learned over time with the grandfather clock, like I didn't even notice it ringing. People would come over and say, "How do you listen to that thing ring every 15 minutes?" I go, "I don't." It rang.
Yeah, what happened? Anymore. It's like when you live near a train track or something, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Train tracks, highways, airports. You just get used to it.
Yeah. So what were you like as a kid?
I was a shy kid.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Definitely. Anytime I went out, like with my parents, I was always attached at their hip. Mm-hmm. Even at like family events, I'd stick right next to them. Mm-hmm. Never really opened up much.
Did we have a kid like that?
Mary
somewhat?
For a while.
And I was like that up until probably a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. I didn't really open up, kept to myself. That was one of the things that I set as a goal when I got into recovery, was to open up and, share, meet some new people. Mm-hmm. I usually start any of my conversations about recovery with my sober date.
Mm-hmm.
It's August 29th, 2016. That was one of the first things that my sponsor told me when I went to go speak the first time. Always lead in with your sober date.
Congratulations on your 5 years.
Thank you.
That's 5
It's
years
a huge
is a big
milestone.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's all about progress.
Mm-hmm.
Progress over perfection.
Mm-hmm.
I have the shirt.
So you were young, but we missed a lot of time. So what happened?
Yeah, so let's go back.
Yeah, let's go back to. Did you play sports? Were you a good student?
Musical.
Student, musical.
I did play sports.
Mm-hmm.
I played at least one sport every year from, I want to say, like 5 to 12.
Did you enjoy them?
I did.
And what was your favorite?
I'm gonna have to go with football.
Yeah.
That was the only one that I really got into.
Mm-hmm.
I started off with soccer
Mm-hmm.
when I was really young. Now it's just a bunch of kids running around chasing after a ball.
I'm familiar.
Moved over to basketball for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I think I played baseball for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
Was never any good at that. Tried to get back into baseball when I was in high school, and I went 1 for 22 with 21 strikeouts.
Well,
Ouch.
So
but you got a hit.
I did.
That's cool. And you remember the hit too, right? Do you? No.
Not really.
Okay.
I was
all
a
right.
freshman, so that was, 14, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I won't tell you how long ago I was a freshman in high school. Oh my gosh.
I can't count that high. What was your position in football?
Corner.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, actually, I went to Wilcox,
Mhm.
and they started the football team up my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down, signed up, did all that. My mom wasn't too happy. She didn't want me to play football because of the concussions and all the
Yes.
injuries that you could
People are
get.
going to flatten you.
I started off, I was 130 pounds. So I wasn't meant to play football. But I basically dedicated my life to football, working out 2-3 times a day, eating healthy, gave up soda for a few years, which I wish I could do that again. Actually, I was captain for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that was my life.
Wow.
I went to school, I worked out, and I played football.
This is in high school or middle school?
High school.
Wow. Were you a good student?
For the most part.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I got good grades.
Any subjects you really liked?
Back when I was in school, it was math.
Yeah. So what happened? How did you end up when did you first started using? What did you use and how and all that?
So my use actually started, I think, pretty late.
Mhm.
I'd try a sip of my dad's beer here and there when I was a kid, if he had something different, just to see what it tasted like.
Did you like it?
For the most part, no.
No, I didn't either.
Me either.
I didn't
No,
like
but,
it.
thinking back on it, even if I tried something that I didn't like and I saw he had it another time, I
Mhm.
still wanted to take a sip,
Yeah,
the next time he had it.
it's going to taste different this time.
You never know. I think I really drank like once or twice before I turned 21. My drinking didn't really start until after I turned 21.
Mm-hmm.
I'd mentioned I went to Wilcox, which is a technical high school. So I was looking to get involved in a trade, and I ended up studying carpentry.
Yeah.
So they actually have a work-study program where you can go out on the job and get on-the-job training instead of going to school. So actually my senior year, I was going to work, making some money, still getting credit for school. I heard all those stories. Every Friday afternoon, we sent somebody down to the package store to get a case of beer. After
Mhm.
lunch, nobody works. We hang out and drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was 17, when I first started with that company, and that never happened. I was looking forward to every single Friday, and it never happened.
It didn't.
Good company.
Until I turned 21.
Uh-huh.
I turned 21 on a Friday. So I made sure I told my boss it was my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So you
And,
stayed with them after graduation.
I did.
Yeah.
I worked for that company for 7 years or so.
What kind of carpentry? All of it?
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, for everything except for the foundation up, I did.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot about other trades too. I learned how to do some electrical and plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I could probably do it now, but I could probably figure it out if I looked at it again.
All right.
My sister used to call me all the time. Hey, can you help me out with this? I need this done. My dishwasher's not draining. Can you come take a look at it? Sure, why not?
Did you like carpentry?
I did.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. A lot of hard work,
Mm-hmm.
but I always liked hard work. My dad always told me, if you want something, earn it. So even from a young age, anything I wanted, I worked towards. I put my mind to it and was able to accomplish that.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to my first job. I was working over at Lake Compounds,
Mm-hmm.
and just turned 16. So I think I worked there for like 2 weeks. I remember coming home and I'm like, I don't like this job. I don't want to do this anymore. I was working in the potato patch. If you're familiar with Lake Compounds, when you first walk in,
Mm-hmm.
there's a set of buildings, there's some games and some food there. And it was
Mhm.
right there. So I was cooking fries and I was cooking chicken tenders. And I did not like that.
Just fries and chicken tenders.
So I remember telling my parents that, and they're like, okay. My dad looks at me. He goes, so you have another job lined up? No. Well, either stick with that job, find a new job, or find a place to live. What do you mean find a place to live? I'm
Mhm.
16. I can't afford to live anywhere. But I think that, instilled it in my mind, I gotta be a productive person. I gotta work for what I want. Nobody's gonna hand me anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up sticking with that job until football season started up.
Mhm.
So I went back to school. I think I was still working there on the weekends a little bit, and I ended up going back there for a second season,
Mhm.
and then that's when my carpentry came in after that.
Wow. And so you're 21, and what'd you do that Friday afternoon?
Went down to the package store,
Yeah.
came back with some beer,
Yeah.
and got made fun of for nursing a beer.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Was that your first beer? Full one that you remember?
First full beer.
Mm-hmm.
But like I had mentioned, I drank like once or twice before that, but it was hard alcohol.
Yeah.
So that was like my first drink that I just kind of like enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up taking a beer for the ride home, which was a common thing, especially in the construction field.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was like a couple Fridays after that we did the same thing, and then it became more frequent.
Were you living at home during this time?
I was, yeah, I
Yeah.
was still living at my parents' house.
Yeah.
But my drinking progressed pretty quickly. It went from having that one beer at the job site and having one on the ride home to having two for the ride home, having three. And then I learned pretty quickly that if I drink hard alcohol, I get the effects quicker. And I don't need to stop at every other gas station to use the bathroom on the ride home. I was working like 45, 50 minutes away from home.
Yeah.
So it was a decent ride.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to come through Hartford. So depending on how traffic was, it's not fun when you're sitting in traffic and have to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
So,
See.
it was, I'm going to say it was probably like 6-7 months after I turned 21, I started buying like nippers and pints for the ride home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd actually position myself right behind 18-wheelers. So growing up, I was a big NASCAR fan. And they always talk about drafting and all that. So, I pretend that I was drafting the truck. One, they drive slower, so it gave me more time to drink on the way home. And two, I got better gas mileage. So I remember...
what were you driving?
I was driving a Ford Fiesta.
You were?
Yeah, I bought a brand new 2011 Ford Fiesta.
Wow.
And it would give me my miles per gallon on the dashboard. So when I got behind the 18-wheelers, I just watch it creep up.
Yeah.
I remember getting it up to 64 miles per gallon one time. And it was the sticker on the car, I think it was like 42 miles per gallon on the highway. So I see myself quite a bit of gas there.
Yeah, you're frugal though, aren't you? You like to, you don't want to spend extra money.
Yeah, anything to save my money so I can, get another drink. Well, I shouldn't. Not at that point. Drinking wasn't my only thing at that point. If I was in the car driving, it was, but I still had other things that I was doing.
If I'm doing
outside,
if I'm doing the math right though, you started really drinking like you're 21, 22, you're 31 now, you're 5 years in recovery, around 26. So you had like just 3-4 years of just, that must have been
3-4 years of extremely hard drinking.
Yeah, tell me about it.
It wasn't fun.
Yeah.
My drinking progressed when I was still framing houses to the point that our crew actually lost that job. They told us that they didn't want us there anymore. And my boss for the construction job hooked me up with...
Was it because all you guys were drinking all the time, or just not good?
Everybody was drinking.
Everybody?
Oh yeah,
everybody was drinking. We actually ended up starting to drink on the job. We're up in the lull, which is a lift that you usually bring material up with, but we built a box so that we could work off of it when we're doing, the fascia and shingles and anything that we needed to. We were up there drinking. But that boss, he actually found me a job installing fences. So I moved over to installing fences. And at that point, I was 23. I don't think I was dependent on alcohol at that point. I do remember working the first week there, not drinking on the job. But then I started, bringing alcohol to work with me. Started off with a water bottle. And then it got to the point where that wasn't enough. So, I progressed to actually bringing a full Gatorade bottle full of vodka to work. Always made sure I left just enough room at the top so I could pour the Gatorade powder mix in to make it look like it was Gatorade. And,
Getting those electrolytes in with your vodka.
I thought I was fooling everybody.
Well, that's clever, though.
It's amazing what we can come up with.
Yeah.
When we're in the midst of our addiction.
I love those Gatorade packets on the Appalachian Trail. Instead of just like instead of water, I would have this magic powder to make it Gatorade. Carried them all the time, but I never heard anyone just doing straight vodka and Gatorade power.
Yeah, I was probably 23 when that started.
Jeez.
And
were you doing any other kinds of drugs or anything?
No,
just serious.
I tried some Percocets one weekend.
Yeah.
And didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
I think I was too intoxicated to even feel the effects of it. Plus, I didn't have any connections. I didn't know where to get anything. So I knew there was package stores on every corner. I didn't have to go far to get the alcohol. So
wow.
What were your parents thinking, and your sister?
I know that they were concerned. They actually had I hate this word, but they had an intervention on me.
Well, you walked into the room and they're all sitting there?
I got home from work one day.
Oh, boy.
and they're all sitting on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, my sister's husband at the time was there too. I just saw the look on their face,
Mm-hmm.
like, this ain't good.
This
So
ain't good.
I mean, obviously,
This ain't good.
I was definitely intoxicated,
Mm-hmm.
and it started off.
How old were you then? Do you remember, roughly? Right in the middle or near the end?
It was probably in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
because I did still drink for a little while after that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say I was probably 24, 25.
And what was the result of the intervention?
Me walking out of the house, slamming the door, getting in my car, and driving around and drinking some more.
Not the ideal result.
No, definitely not what they wanted.
Did they get a chance to talk to you at all, or did you just see them and hear what it was about and just turned and bolted?
I think I gave them a couple minutes,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't much.
Yeah.
As soon as they started saying stuff I didn't want to hear, I was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And did you come back later that day, or did you go somewhere else and stay, or what happened? Do you remember?
I did come back home. I don't know how long after. I needed
Mhm.
a place to lay down and go to sleep. So
Yeah.
I want to say it was probably a few hours later where I knew that my sister and her husband at the time wouldn't be there
Mm-hmm.
anymore. It was probably late enough that my parents were already in bed. I knew I could just hop into bed, go to sleep, and not have to worry about it.
Deal with it in the morning. Wow. Keep going.
Yeah, so it got to a point where my parents actually told me to go get some help or find a place to live, because
Mhm.
that's all I was doing. I was working, I was drinking, and I'd come home and I'd just pass out in my bed.
Mm-hmm.
Wake up in the middle of the night, drink some more, get rid of the shakes. At this
Mhm.
point, I was definitely dependent on the alcohol. And, the longer that was going on, the less that people wanted to be around me, then the depression started to sink in.
Mm-hmm.
It got to the point where nobody wanted to be my friend anymore. So it was literally just go to work, come home and drink. And then I got in my own head, but I couldn't do anything else at that point.
Yeah, alcohol's an intense depressant, so why wouldn't you be depressed if you're drinking it all the time?
Right.
Yeah.
So it was a turning point for you.
I was sitting in my car in a commuter parking lot in the middle
your
of
Ford
August
Fiesta.
in my Ford
You
Fiesta.
didn't wreck it yet?
No.
Not good for you.
Actually, I never got into any trouble with my drinking. With all the drinking and driving that I did,
Mm-hmm.
there was never any trouble.
Wow.
So I'm very lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I did it,
Me
because
too.
I put on many miles
Mm-hmm.
under the influence. Yeah, I was sitting in a commuter parking lot. So it's towards the end of August, 90 degrees out. Had no money left. This is I always thought my drinking was under control because I was able to pay my bills. I was able to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Never got into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of August, I stopped going to work. And I just sit in that commuter parking lot and drink. So I ran out of money. Couldn't afford to start my car and turn the AC on, because I wanted to be able to get that other drink. And, I woke up one morning, started to feel the shakes. This was like a month and a half after getting out of Rushford for the inpatient program. So I started to feel those shakes come on again. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. I'm 26 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm about to die if I, go back to doing what I was doing. My eyes were yellow. Everybody,
How much were you drinking at the end?
I was drinking over a liter of vodka
A day.
a day.
Wow.
I would buy one of those big candles. I think they're 1.75s,
Mm-hmm.
and that wouldn't last me 2 days. I drank what I wanted the first day, and then I had to space out my drinks for the second day until, well, when I was still working, I had to space it out until I got out of work.
Mm-hmm.
And the shakes were coming on that second day when I was at work.
How much does 1.75 cost liters? Do you remember? Probably had to try and let's figure out how much you could.
I think it was a little over $20.
Uh-huh.
And I was pissed off at that because I always had to go to the ATM and take out 40.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to take the change that I have, and that'll be enough to get the second bottle.
Mm-hmm.
But it never did, because I'd always get something else.
Mm-hmm. How do you know if your ATM is addicted to money?
Oh gosh.
I don't know. I know I just heard you say it, but I don't remember.
It suffers from withdrawals. I'm sorry, Sandy.
This dad joke has been brought to you by.
So the Multiple Pathways of Recovery Conference.
You really jumped. You really jumped over Rushford.
Uh-oh.
So how'd you end up at Rushford?
Was that the only time you went away?
No, I went to a few programs.
Oh, wow.
So after that initial intervention didn't work, you ended up getting into a few programs.
So I'm actually going to back up a little bit more. My sister actually used to work at Rushford.
Mm-hmm.
She did something in admissions.
Mm-hmm.
Before I even really got into drinking heavily, I asked her questions about people that would go into treatment. I'm like, do people go back there? Or is it like a one-time thing and they're good and you never see them again? She goes, oh, no, we see people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand that at that point. I'm like, you go get the help that you need. You're not withdrawing from whatever substance you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can live your life again.
Right.
And then a couple years later, I'm in that situation.
Yeah.
But, I want to say I was like 24, 25 when I went into my first program. And I didn't want to go. But my parents gave me that option, get some help or find a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into detox, did my 5 days there, went back home. And I think I was sober one day. My sister actually got me connected with who was my first sponsor. So I ended up meeting up with him, and I think we went to a meeting. He had a big notebook for me to start a gratitude list and start my steps and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to do meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Sounded like a Charlie Brown school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
When I first went in there, I didn't understand a word.
Wow.
Didn't understand a word anybody said.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the meeting was over, I was in my car, I was gone, and didn't go back to another meeting for however long it was. But then, the second time came around where my parents gave me the option of get some help or find a place to live. So I went back, I did a detox again. Everybody was trying to tell me to do the inpatient program, which I didn't want to do. I was still installing fences at that time. So I'm like, I have to go back to work. I got my bills to pay. I'll try doing some meetings. I think I went to like one or two.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was sober for like a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then the weekend came around.
Mm-hmm.
And ended up having a beer. Just one beer. Not going to be a big deal. But I bought a 6-pack. I don't know why. So there was 5 in the back of my car.
Mm-hmm.
So I proved to myself I could have one beer that first day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then I got in my car the next day, and those 5 beers are calling my name.
Yeah.
And then I was right back to, drinking over a liter of vodka again within 3 days.
Wow.
That lasted for a little while. And then between my second and third detox, I actually lost my job at the fencing company. I remember we used to have to park across the street. So I was walking across the street, and I see the owner there standing in the doorway. He's like, I told you don't have to come in. You said that yesterday, not today.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, we don't need you anymore. You got to be kidding me. Why?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand. I didn't think anybody knew that I was, drinking on the job.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up spending like a week at home trying to convince my parents that there wasn't enough work or the weather was bad, truck broke down. And then they finally realized that I was lying to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I think it was like a week after my 26th birthday, June 10th. I ended up going up to Natchog because my sister wasn't able to get me into Rushford. So I went up there and I finally caved in, said that I would do the inpatient program over at Rushford, but they didn't have any beds available. So I started doing their outpatient program. I think I did that for like a week. And one of the counselors came up and said, "Oh, we have a bed available. You want to take that?" Yeah, sure, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up doing that. That was middle to the end of June 2019. I remember when I got into the inpatient program, my only thought was, I'm never going to drink again. Never going to drink again. That's all I said. But I wasn't taking in anything else that anybody else was saying. I was still trying to do it my way. I did do a couple meetings after I got out of that program. So I want to say I got out of there end of July. Ended up getting a job at Bizzuto's, which was not a fun job. Lasted there for like 2 weeks. And this is where, I stopped going to work and I was just drinking. So I was like a month and a half out of Rushford at that point.
Sitting in the parking lot. It's 90 degrees.
Sweating. Miserable. This is before they had TV on phones and all that good stuff. So, I had nothing. I was just sitting there. I'd follow the sun. I would move my car to stay in the shade, but that still didn't help out too much.
What parking lot?
There was two of them. There was the commuter parking lot next to the truck stop in Southington. And then there was one in Cheshire going down Route 10 right before 691. And every time I was at the one in Cheshire, there was always a cop in that parking lot.
Yeah.
So I'd always keep watching him. Is he looking at me? Does he know what I'm doing? Pull out a big bottle to take a big gulp out of it. Foolish. Looking back on it, I can't believe I did that, but I did. Like I had mentioned before, I drank for like a week after I relapsed, and I started to feel the shakes come on. And I remember vividly waking up on a Monday morning, August 29th of 2016. I sat down on my parents' couch. My mom was working, sent her a text. This is the first time that I asked for help. Every other time it was get some help or find a place to live.
Yeah.
So, I sent her the text, I need to do something. And I wanted to say that was like 9 o'clock in the morning. She worked until 11. So I had 2 hours to kill before she got home. And I remember actually on the day before, the 28th, there was a little bit of alcohol left in the bottle, and I threw it out the window. I don't know if that was me surrendering at that point, because normally I'd finish everything I had. But I ended up driving around trying to find that bottle. I knew exactly where I threw it out, but it was full of grass and weeds. So I'm driving down the side of the road, looking out my window, trying to, see if I spot some glass. Didn't end up finding it. And then ended up driving back home. And my mom brought me down to Rushford. That was probably the longest ride that I ever had. And I don't know if that's because I was ready to finally get some help, or if it was, the first time that I was willing to try something different.
So what was different this time for you?
I think I was just ready. I was tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah. Did you end up going to a lot of meetings after this episode?
I did. I ended up doing the inpatient program again at
Uh-huh.
Rushford. I ended up going to Lebanon Pines after that.
Oh, yeah.
So I did 3 months down there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was still trying to control things when I got to Lebanon Pines.
Mm-hmm.
Because my discharge date was actually 2 days after Christmas. So I remember talking to my sponsor. I'm like, I'm leaving early. My family has a get-together Christmas Eve. I want to be with my parents on Christmas, so I'm leaving a couple days early. I wasn't going to leave a month early, but
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be able to be home for the holidays. Spending Thanksgiving there was hard enough, but they actually did a very good job. They put together a nice meal. It felt like Thanksgiving when I was in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up working out where there was a sober house bed that opened up 2 days before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So they asked me if I wanted it. Like, absolutely. It was in the Meriden area. My sponsor at the time, his network was in Wallingford. So I was close enough where I was able to, meet his network, start building mine. I was able to go to my family's for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was, my higher power jumping in and saying, you put in some work,
Mm-hmm.
here you go, enjoy your time with your
I think
family.
so.
I did start doing meetings. I was actually able to understand what people said in meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't going in one ear and out the other. Actually, I remember the first meeting I was at was a speaker meeting. And the gentleman always said, I've never had it so good after he said his name.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, what do you mean you've never had it so good? You're sitting in a basement with 30 other guys talking about what you used to do
Right.
and how miserable it was.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went up to him after the meeting was over. I thanked him for sharing. I raised my hand. I said I was new at the beginning of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So, he started talking to me a little bit. I asked him where there was a meeting the next day. He told me where there was another meeting. I went to that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I did the same thing. I went up to somebody, asked where there was a meeting the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So I got my little circle of meetings that I started doing. I didn't do a 90 and 90. I always say I did my version of a 90 and 90.
Mm-hmm.
I did 5 meetings. I did a yoga recovery with my sister for a couple weeks. It was still kind of a meeting. They read out some kind of book. I don't remember what book it was. They said the Serenity Prayer. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, that works for me. I'm doing yoga. It's something positive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bettering myself by doing this. So,
Mm-hmm.
as long as I'm doing something good, that's all that matters to me. And then Saturdays I would do church. So I did something positive every day
Yeah.
for the first few months. And I was able to, actually I think doing that yoga and going to church showed me that I was able to go out and do things
Mm-hmm.
without having to pick up a drink. Yoga, I had my sister there, so I felt a little bit more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Everything wasn't centered on me.
Mm-hmm.
Church, I sat in the back, but still got the message.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a meeting or something positive every day for a long time.
You placed a lot of emphasis on work. Did you get a job right away?
No.
Hmm.
We're going back a few years now. It's tough to...
No, it's all right. So I'm curious about how you heard about CCAR and what you were doing at that time.
Okay, so after I got out of Lebanon Pines and moved into the sober house, I had basic needs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which is a program to help you get basic needs.
Yeah, to help, pay for
Mm-hmm.
rent and whatever else you might need.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent like the first month not even worrying about work. Yeah, I was actually doing IOP too. So I was doing IOP, doing meetings at night, and I didn't even think about work at that point. I remember talking to my dad. It was probably a month into living in the sober house, and he mentioned working for Nabisco, stocking shelves, putting Oreos and Ritz and all that stuff up on the shelf. I'm like, you know what? It's not what I want to do, but it'll be a paycheck. It's a good start. It actually took a while to get hired for them. I think I actually had to ask my parents to take some money out of my account so I could pay my first week at the sober house. And then I was able to start getting checks from Nabisco. But at that point, I was only working enough hours to be able to afford my rent and gas to get to meetings. So I could still do my meetings, still do my IOP. Worked for Nabisco for 2.5 years. Got promoted, started working part-time, got promoted to full-time. And it's hard work. Definitely not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And you had mentioned, how did I hear about CCAR? Actually, my first sponsor, he used to work for American Addiction Centers. So he called me one day. I remember this. I was standing in the back of Target, loading up a U-boat, putting all the product on so I could wheel it out. And he asked me how I liked my job. I don't.
I don't.
He goes, so there's this place called CCAR that you might want to look into and apply, because some of the coaches would actually send referrals over his way. So I'm like, all right, I'll take a look at it. I'm not a person that likes change. So it took me a few days to, go on the website and look at it. And then like, all right, whatever, I'll just, send in my application. I actually sent my cover letter to my sister to proofread. And she always helped me out with that kind of stuff. So she's got, you got to change this, change that. I'm like, can you just write it for me? Which she didn't.
All right.
I just want to throw that out there.
You're hired now.
However you get it done, you get it done.
So, yeah, I knew absolutely nothing about CCAR. But I ended up getting a phone call to do the initial phone interview, which I almost didn't pick up that call. I don't pick up numbers that I don't know. I was actually on my way into work at that point. So I ended up sitting in my car in the parking lot, did the interview. I'm thinking back, I'm like, should I have said that? Should I have said something different? Like, I wasn't expecting it, so it was like just sprung on me, and I didn't have my coffee at that point. It was early. And then I ended up getting a second call to come down and do the face-to-face interview. And I was actually Googling what CCAR stood for as I walked in. I had no idea. Like, I don't want to walk in and not know what I'm talking about.
Wow.
And my enthusiasm, I was told my enthusiasm is what got me my third interview. And then I ended up getting hired.
So you must have gone to the Recovery Coach Academy pretty quick after that.
Yeah, I went through a bunch of trainings within like the first 2 or 3 months after getting hired. I couldn't tell you exactly when it was. Yeah, it was a lot crammed into the first, couple months here at CCAR. And I knew I was more prepared for this job because of all the work that I put in prior, going to meetings, building my AA is my pathway. That was drilled into my head. And that and Celebrate Recovery. So I knew what I was talking about. I knew I could help people, especially since I went through everything. I truly think that there's no better person to talk about recovery than somebody that's been in it. I remember when I was in Rushford, the clinician would say, all right, you do this, this, and this, and you're good. It doesn't work that way. I've tried that. It didn't help me. All right, so then do this, this, and this. No, that doesn't work either. I've tried many different things to get me to the point where I'm at today.
Mm-hmm. As a recovery coach, you're not telling people what to do, are you?
I am not.
What are you doing?
I am helping them find things that'll help them.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll throw out some things that help me.
Mm-hmm.
Cooking.
Mm-hmm.
I started gardening.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I never thought I'd ever get into.
All right.
Coloring was a big thing. I'll give them things that help me, and then they can use that to, see if that'll help them in their life.
You're very practical and logical, almost like you're mathematical. How was all this emotionally for you?
In the beginning, it was very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
I was a broken person when I first came into recovery this last time.
Well, you're probably not. Were you emotional as a child or a kid, or when you were active, or were you just kind of? You said you kept a lot of stuff inside.
I think I'm a reserved person.
So you feel things deeply, but you don't necessarily let people see it or show it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And how does that help you with being a coach today?
I think it helps keep me level-headed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't react on first instinct if somebody tells me something or, says something to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll analyze it and then go from there.
Mm-hmm. How many people have you seen in the emergency department, do you think?
Oh, geez. I know you asked people this question before. I was going to look it up and I completely forgot. Well, I've been with CCAR for a little over 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I'd say I'd average between 15 and 20 people a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like 600.
No, that for 1 year. So you're
1,200, 1,500.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's up there.
I know.
Definitely up there.
Yeah.
What's life like for you today? What's family life? Are you living with your parents?
So actually, after I left the sober house, I moved in with my sponsor for like 1.5 years. I was renting a room from him for a while. And, I think that was a big help for me too. Seeing somebody that had quite a bit of time in recovery, see the things that he was doing. So I lived with him for like 1.5 years. My grandmother has a 2-family house in New Britain that she's owned since she moved here from Poland. Her tenant was moving back to Poland, and it was time. It was time for me to take that next step. So I'm like, I'm going to move into my own place. It was definitely a big change. I had to do all the stuff around the house myself. There was nobody else there to do it. But I could also leave the dishes in the sink overnight if I wanted to.
Yeah, see?
You don't live alone.
That's perfectly okay, though.
But you don't live alone.
I think I do sometimes.
You do.
I still had my grandmother living downstairs at that point. So I knew that I still had some accountability. I couldn't just do what I wanted to. If I showed up at 2:00 in the morning, she'd hear me come in and, that might get back to my parents or my sister, and I don't need any of that. So yeah, I'm still living there, still living in New Britain.
Must be nice for her to have you there too.
Yeah. Well, she actually had a stroke back in February last year.
Oh.
So she spent a little bit of time in the hospital. When she came back home, my mom actually moved in with her to help take care of her. She's doing okay. She can still do some things, but she can't be on her own.
Can she make pierogies still?
I make them for her now.
Oh, that's a great answer.
Actually, I think it was the first time that me and my mom tried making them. While she was living at my parents' house, we had her try to make them, and it didn't come out too well, but I got no problem making them for her now. So yeah, my mom actually moved in downstairs for like a month or two, and then I ended up taking my grandmother back to her house. So I'm there by myself now. Go downstairs, take care of her cat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, try to keep that clean. The whole gardening thing started when my grandmother was coming back home because she had a garden for 50, 60 plus years. I'm like, I'm going to go plant some tomatoes and peppers and, you know, make it feel like home. You know, we can get her outside to look at it. And I figured it'd be easy. You know, go throw some water on it every once in a while. And
I can't even take care of a succulent.
No, my grandma had a garden when she lived with us as a kid growing up, and the amount of time and effort it took to, oh my gosh.
I was out there every single day. And when I started that garden, it was right in the beginning of COVID, so everybody was on lockdown. You're not going anywhere. So I had the time to go out there and, you know, actually keep it nice and clean. But I think the more that I started doing that, the more I enjoyed it. I was getting fresh air. I was getting sunshine. That was probably one of the things I liked best about construction was being outside, being in the sun. So I started off last year gardening with absolutely no experience. And then this year I planted some things. I actually started some things from seeds. Have way too many cayenne peppers that I'm drying out right now. Somehow I ended up with 7 plants. I'm like, okay, well, I'll be able to find someone to give it to. Yeah, I enjoy it. You know, it gives me something to do. You know, no matter what's going on, even if I want to go out in the rain and play around out there, I do. You know, if I have that thought, you know, my mind still goes 1,000 different directions every day. I know I can go out there and pick some weeds and focus on that, and you know, usually that thought will disappear, and then I have something to show for it. The amount of tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers that I've eaten this year is ridiculous, but
you're healthy
it's
too.
Healthy.
Yeah, very healthy. What would you say to people that might be struggling with an addiction? What do you say?
I've been in your position. You know, especially if I go to HOCC. I go into their ABU all the time. You know, that's where I used to go.
Do you want to ask? Go
What's
ahead.
HOCC?
Hospital Central Connecticut.
In
New Britain.
Okay.
Also known as New Britain General.
Yeah.
Took me a few months to get used to saying Hospital Central Connecticut. Because I was born at New Britain General, so
Yeah.
it's always going to be New Britain General to me.
And what's ABU?
Acute Behavioral
Unit? Okay.
Health Unit.
Got it.
They have different abbreviations
Yeah.
for it at different hospitals. But yeah, you know, I'll tell people that I've been in your position. I've been laying in that bed, and look at me now.
How can I help you with your recovery today?
Recovery is possible. There is hope.
Yeah. And so, what do you think about, in general, the art and science of recovery coaching? I know we've talked about that in the Recovery Coach Academy. How would you describe what that means to you, what it's like? And you said at the very beginning, this isn't really like a job for you.
It's not.
Why?
It's a way of life.
It
You
is.
know, I live recovery 24/7. My first thought is, what can I do to better myself? You know, take that next right step. My first sponsor would always tell me, just do that next right thing.
Do the next right thing. We've heard that a few times.
Keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Right.
You know, if you put one foot in front of the other, you're getting closer to whatever your goal is, whatever you're trying to accomplish.
And it's hard for me. It's hard. Anytime we talk to emergency department recovery coaches, just the number of people you guys see and help is just mind-blowing in a lot of ways. For our audience, I don't say this too often, but what was the last case you had, the last person you talked to? You don't have to use names or anything, but because just to make it real. And where were you? What happened? What was the outcome?
So I actually had one of our new coaches shadowing me yesterday.
Which one?
Gina.
Nice. Yeah.
So she actually was taking charge.
Mm-hmm.
She was the one that was coaching.
You were her backup.
I think actually yesterday was her first day doing that.
Yeah.
So I was there to, be of support.
Yeah.
We were down at Middlesex, and there was a gentleman who he had just recently detoxed at home. The doctor sent him home with some medication, and he ended up drinking again the night before. And he didn't want to go to any treatment. He just drank that one night.
Mm-hmm.
AA's not really his thing. He's considering it, but Gina actually did a very good job.
Mm-hmm.
She actually gave me a new resource that I can utilize.
Which is what?
Ben's Friends.
I never heard of Ben's Friends either.
I never heard of that either. So Friends of Bill is AA.
Yeah.
I still have to look into it, but I think Ben's Friends is for people that work in the food industry that are struggling with some kind of addiction.
The whole complexity with that.
And he's worked in the food industry his whole life.
Wow.
So when she brought that up, I'm like,
what?
I got something to look into now.
All right.
Yeah.
And then actually the recovery's mother was in the room too, and she ended up talking to the mother for a little bit. Then I started talking to the recovery for a little, letting him know, that recovery is possible. Just got to try something different. You already know what doesn't work for you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's try something different.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
How old was this guy roughly? Was his mother there?
40s, 50s.
Yeah.
He was a little bit older.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's real. They have a real case, and what Jason's talking about, when new coaches come on, they have this whole onboarding process, and then they shadow. And I think you probably you want to take this one?
Yeah. So the new coaches will shadow the experienced coaches.
Yeah.
Usually for a couple weeks.
And so you're the 31-year-old now with 2.5 years experience. So you got a lot of experience on our thing. You're one of the experienced
coaches. Well, if
coaches.
you're seeing 600 people a year.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Yeah.
I think Jason
takes a lot of shifts too, so he's probably seen more than that.
That I do. I got to be top 5 for most experienced coaches here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, without doubt.
So yeah, the new coaches will shadow, gather that experience, see how things are done.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a couple weeks, they get to take the reins,
take the lead,
develop their own art.
Yeah.
And that's something that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to figure out my art.
Yeah.
That's something that I don't know if I'll ever, figure that out, because things are going to always be changing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the analogy you just shared is there's always more to learn. Like, what's Ben's Friends? Now I'm going to go look at that too. I mean, those are just things. None of us is as smart as all of us, so we just keep learning from each other.
That's something that I learned very quickly with CCAR was, we're just one big team.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about just me and you.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the recovery.
Right.
So when we have, 17 coaches, 16 coaches, when we all...
And the EDRC, and we have like 6 or 7 in the DOC program now too.
Right. Yeah, so about 20 people.
Yeah.
When we all put our heads together, 20 brains is better than one.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Love that.
I need all the help I can get.
Thank you, Jason. I believe in you. You're doing a wonderful job.
And I'm going to keep trying to do my best.
Continue. Exactly.
Awesome.